The change did not begin with a loud moment. It did not begin with a crowd, applause, or a sudden miracle that everyone could see. It began quietly in the heart of a young man who had grown tired of living the same day in a different form. His life was not falling apart in a dramatic way. It was something more silent than that. It was a slow heaviness, a repeated cycle, a life that kept moving but never seemed to move forward. His name was Adrian, and he knew what it felt like to be stuck. Every morning, he woke up with the same thoughts. He thought about what he had not done, where he had failed, and how far behind he believed he was. He looked at other people and saw progress everywhere except in his own life. He saw people building businesses, finding purpose, making money, becoming stronger, and stepping into new seasons. He watched them and felt that there was something missing in him. He had dreams, but they were buried under doubt. He had strength, but it was covered by fear. He had potential, but he did not know how to use it. He often told himself that maybe his time had not come yet. That was how he stayed comfortable in delay. He used waiting as an excuse. He used fear as a reason. He used disappointment as proof that change was difficult. He wanted a new life, but he kept thinking like someone who already expected failure. He did not realize that the life he wanted could not grow in the same soil as the thoughts he kept feeding it. That was the first lesson the shift began to teach him. It happened in a very ordinary place. He was sitting alone one evening near the window of his small room. The air was quiet, and the street outside had slowed down. He had just finished another day that felt empty to him. Nothing terrible had happened, yet he felt worn out. He had spent most of the day scrolling through his phone, comparing himself to people who seemed to be moving faster than he was. He had ignored small tasks he needed to finish. He had pushed away a few ideas that might have helped him because they looked too difficult at first glance. Then, in the stillness, he felt a thought rise in him that he could not ignore. Nothing outside is going to change until something inside changes first. The thought was simple, but it landed heavily. He leaned back in his chair and stared at the wall. He had heard similar ideas before, but this time it felt personal. He realized that he had been waiting for life to rescue him from his own patterns. He had been waiting for motivation to save him, waiting for the right mood, waiting for the perfect timing, waiting for a sign that never seemed to arrive. But maybe the sign had been there all along. Maybe the shift he wanted was not coming from outside. Maybe it was already beginning within him. That night, he did not sleep well. He kept thinking about the same thing. He had been asking life for a different result while refusing to build a different mindset. He had been speaking negativity over himself for years and then wondering why hope felt so far away. He had been saying he was not ready, not enough, not smart enough, not disciplined enough, not lucky enough. After a while, those words had become a kind of identity. They were no longer just thoughts. They were the lens through which he saw everything. The next morning, he woke up earlier than usual. He did not feel magically transformed. He still felt tired. He still felt uncertain. But something had shifted enough for him to notice his own patterns. He sat on the edge of the bed and made a quiet decision. He would stop speaking to himself like a defeated man. He would begin to watch his thoughts carefully. He would begin to choose differently, even if the results did not show up immediately. That first day was not dramatic. He did not run outside and solve his life in one morning. He simply began with one small act of awareness. When negative thoughts came, he noticed them instead of obeying them. When he felt the urge to quit before starting, he paused. When he wanted to say there was no point, he challenged the thought. He was learning that every shift begins with interruption. Old habits must be interrupted before new ones can grow. He started by fixing one part of his routine. He made his bed. He cleaned his room. He opened the curtains and let light in. He took a walk instead of staying in the same place with the same thoughts. These things may sound small, but small things matter when a person has been living in stagnation for too long. A clean room does not fix a life, but it can signal that change has begun. A short walk does not solve every problem, but it can clear enough space in the mind for a better thought to enter. As the days passed, Adrian noticed that his moods were less in control of him than they used to be. Before, he had treated his feelings like commands. If he felt lazy, he rested. If he felt discouraged, he stopped. If he felt unworthy, he withdrew. Now he was beginning to understand that feelings are real, but they are not always reliable guides. He could feel fear and still move. He could feel uncertain and still choose action. He could feel tired and still take one more step. That was another part of the shift. He began reading about discipline, but he did not try to absorb everything at once. He took one idea and practiced it. He learned that consistency matters more than intensity. This was difficult for him because he had always liked dramatic starts. He liked the feeling of beginning something new. The hard part was staying with it after the excitement faded. Now, he was learning that real growth does not come from a burst of energy. It comes from repeated choices made on ordinary days when no one is watching. He started setting a simple plan for each day. Wake up, wash up, eat something, do one useful task, learn something new, move his body, turn off the distractions for a while. He did not try to become a perfect person overnight. He only wanted to become a more intentional one. That changed the atmosphere of his life. There was still struggle, but now there was direction. There was still pressure, but now there was movement. The shift was not only about habits. It was also about identity. For a long time, Adrian had thought of himself as someone stuck on the outside of success, looking in. He believed that other people had some advantage he did not have. He thought they were naturally better, smarter, stronger, and more capable. But as he began to grow, he saw that much of what he admired in others was not luck. It was discipline. It was a sacrifice. It was patience. It was a willingness to keep going after the first effort faded. This realization changed how he looked at himself. He started asking better questions. Instead of asking why life was unfair, he asked what he could build. Instead of asking why he was behind, he asked what step he could take today. Instead of asking why he had not become everything yet, he asked what kind of man he needed to become in order to grow into it. The shift became real in the way he spoke. He used to speak in a language of defeat. He would say things like, "I always fail," or "nothing ever works for me," or "I'm just not that kind of person." Those words seemed harmless at first, but they had shaped him deeply. They had trained his mind to expect less. Now he has begun replacing them. He was careful at first because the old language was deeply rooted. But slowly he started saying, "I can learn this. I can improve. I'm not finished yet. This is part of the process." A different future requires different words. One day, while helping a neighbor carry some supplies, he heard someone say that he seemed calmer than before. That comment stayed with him. It was not the kind of praise he had once wanted, but it meant more than he expected. He realized that the shift was visible before it became impressive. His life was still ordinary in many ways, but his spirit was no longer as restless as it had been. He was becoming steadier from the inside out. That is how real change often looks. It does not arrive with fireworks. It arrives with peace. It shows up in the way a person responds instead of reacting. It appears in the way they handle pressure. It is seen in the way they no longer panic over every setback. The outside may stay the same for a while, but the inside begins to reflect a new order. Adrian faced setbacks during this season too. There were days when he slipped back into old thoughts. There were moments when he felt discouraged because progress was not moving fast enough. There were times when he compared himself to others again and felt the old ache return. But the difference now was that he did not stay in those thoughts as long. He recognized them faster. He knew they were not the truth. They were only habits trying to reclaim space. When the setback came, he did not call it failure. He called it part of the process and kept going. That was important. People often think the shift is only real if it is smooth, but the truth is that most real change includes resistance. Old habits do not leave quietly. Fear does not vanish in one day. Delay does not surrender without a fight. But when a person keeps choosing growth, old life loses its grip little by little. He also learned to be patient with himself. This was harder than it sounds. Many people can encourage others more easily than they can encourage themselves. Adrian had often been harsh with himself when he missed a goal or made a mistake. That harshness had not helped him. It had only made him want to hide. Now he began speaking to himself with firmness and kindness at the same time. He told himself the truth without crushing himself. He admitted when he fell short, but he did not label himself as hopeless. He treated growth like a journey, not a courtroom. That kind of thinking gave him strength. As his mindset became more stable, his choices became more practical. He started paying attention to how he used his time. He reduced distractions. He became more honest about what he wanted. He stopped dreaming in vague terms and started building small habits that matched those dreams. He looked for opportunities to learn and contribute. He listened more carefully to advice that was wise. He began noticing that discipline creates confidence because each kept promise to yourself becomes evidence that you can be trusted. One evening, after a long day, he sat with an older man from his community who had quietly lived a life of integrity. The man did not speak in dramatic language. He simply said that many people want the fruit of change without the root of change. Adrian understood that immediately. He had wanted better results without deeper work. Now he saw that the real shift is underground before it becomes visible. Roots grow in the hidden place. The character grows in the hidden place. Identity grows in the hidden place. The world only sees the fruit later. This understanding gave him a new respect for slow growth. He stopped being ashamed that his progress was not flashy. He stopped measuring his life by other people's timelines. He began to see that steady growth is not weakness. It is strength that has learned to wait. He also noticed something else. The more he improved, the more his relationships changed. People responded differently when he became more grounded. He was less defensive. He was more reliable. He listened more than he talked. He did not need to prove himself constantly. He no longer reacted to every challenge as if it were a personal attack. That made him easier to trust and easier to be around. In a quiet way, the shift was not just changing his life. It was changing the atmosphere around him. His family saw it first. They noticed the calmer way he moved through the house. They noticed that he helped more without being asked. They noticed that he no longer disappeared into frustration every time something felt hard. His mother, who had carried many of her own silent worries, looked at him one day and said that something about him had become lighter. He did not answer with a long speech. He simply smiled because he knew she was right. He was lighter, not because life had become perfect, not because every dream had already come true, not because every problem was gone. He was lighter because he had stopped carrying lies about himself. He was lighter because he had begun to live with a new mindset. He was lighter because he knew that the shift was not a fantasy. It was happening in real time, one choice at a time. Soon he began to help others who were stuck where he once had been. He did not speak to them like someone above them. He spoke to them like someone who remembered what it felt like to be trapped in old thinking. He told them that waiting for change while thinking the same thoughts will only repeat the same life. He told them to watch their words, their habits, and their reactions. He told them that the most important shift often happens before anyone else notices. He reminded them that life can begin to change in a quiet room, on a quiet morning, with a simple decision. A decision to get up. A decision to try. A decision to stop feeding fear. A decision to keep going after disappointment. A decision to choose better thoughts. A decision to stop making excuses and start building something real. That was the message of his life now. Months became a year, then another. The shift kept deepening. Adrian did not become a different person in the sense of losing who he was. He became more fully himself. The uncertainty that once ruled him gave way to purpose. The self-doubt that once held him back gave way to calm strength. The scattered days became more structured. The hopeless thinking became hopeful action. He understood that transformation is not about becoming someone fake. It is about removing what has kept your true self hidden. He looked back and saw how far he had come. He also saw how much more there was to do. That no longer frightened him. It encouraged him. He knew now that growth is a lifelong path. The shift is not a moment you visit once. It is a way of living. It means keeping your mind awake. It means staying honest. It means returning to the truth every time you drift. It means remembering that you are not stuck in yesterday if you're willing to think differently today. There are still hard days. There always would be. But now hard days did not define him. They informed him. They taught him to be resilient. They reminded him to stay grounded. They showed him that peace is not the absence of trouble. It is the presence of a trained mind. That was the deeper meaning of a shift. It is not just about becoming successful. It is about becoming stable enough to carry success, failure, waiting, and responsibility without losing yourself. Adrian's story became a simple guidance story for the people around him because it showed something true and useful. It showed that the shift is real when a person stops expecting life to change while refusing to change their inner world. It showed that the mind is powerful. It showed that habits matter. It showed that small steps matter. It showed that consistency beats intensity. It showed that a person can rise from low thinking into a clear direction. It showed that hope is not a feeling alone. Hope is a practice. If someone asked him what changed his life, he would not speak like a philosopher or a celebrity. He would say that he started by noticing his thoughts. He would say that he stopped obeying every negative feeling. He would say that he built discipline in small pieces. He would say that he became more honest with himself. He would say that the shift happened when he began to trust that change could be real even before it looked impressive. That is the heart of this story. The shift is real, but begins quietly. It begins when a person chooses a different thought. It grows when that thought becomes a habit. It deepens when the habit becomes a life. It moves from the hidden place into the visible place. And by the time the outside world notices, the inside world has already been transformed. So if your life feels stuck, do not wait for a dramatic rescue before you begin. Start where you are. Change the thought. Change the word. Change the habit. Change the response. Be patient with the process. Keep going when it feels slow. Keep choosing growth when comfort tries to pull you back. The shift may begin small, but it is real, and it can change everything.